The way municipalities do business in Vermont, the select board signs the warrant. We can issue small payments, but when we set aside the monies to cover the warrant, we're moving monies out of one account into an active fluid account. And unless we have sufficient funds there to cover that request for payment, we can't do it. So in this particular case, the money was not available to us unless we made a special move and the warrant had already been prepared. And that's what the select board has signed this evening. So yours will be on the next warrant. You will have it no later than December 11th.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are we back up? Okay, Joanne? We apologize to the viewing audience. We'll have some technical difficulties, I guess. You haven't missed a whole lot. We've approved the warrants and the minutes, and Ms. Joanne Herrenhaus will be here shortly to talk about some things the chamber has going, I hope.
Joe, there may be other citizens that you could...
Are there other citizens like to speak to us? Come up, sir. Give us your name, please.
It's from Bennington.
Okay. Have a seat, please.
My friend and I had spoken to Stuart about this and several other people around Bennington. To bring to your attention, one of the more dangerous roads in Bennington being Orchard Road with no room for pedestrians and in need of speed control as well.
Okay, there is speed control in front of the school. Are you talking Upper Orchard or down closer to Northside Drive? Where are we talking about?
Between Molly Stark and 7A.
Okay. So it goes by the housing areas that way?
Yep.
Yep.
There's
Bad curve
there's
also.
Always pedestrians and
Right,
speeding
it's a
cars.
bad curve also there. Okay.
I think the request here really focuses on whether or not the town could install a sidewalk
Yes.
along that stretch. And we've been looking at that stretch of road for years. One, to find an alternate path, because as you're aware, on the inside of the turn, that road drops probably anywhere from 20 to 30 feet. So to install a sidewalk would take quite a bit of fill material to build up the slope and make it so that it would be stable. In the interim, both Applegate and Willowbrook have been working to create a pathway between the two developments.
The rail trail.
Would bring, well, not only the rail trail,
No.
but a separate trail.
Yeah.
That would bring the folks through Applegate to Willowbrook. We've also, as we announced just, I think a week ago or 2 weeks ago, we have received the go-ahead to proceed on the rail trail, which Fred has just mentioned. And that will take us to a juncture that will essentially meet Applegate's property, and so that Applegate folks could move down that hill and onto the rail trail, the pathway, and move along the old former railroad right-of-way without going out onto the street. I agree it's very dangerous, but the cost of a sidewalk there, in talking with my highway superintendent, some $30,000 in concrete alone, fill material, depending on what you would need to stabilize it, anywhere from another $100,000 or more. To make sure that that sidewalk had sufficient material and base to withstand the slope that it will be on.
Okay, well, you know, that whole quadrangle there, I mean, it's bad because you come down 7A, go into that underpass that you know I love so dearly.
Yep.
That's another place that we have a lot of problems with, so it's something we need to look at.
I think we're really are attempting to address the pedestrian issue via internal pathways and sidewalks as opposed to external along the highway right-of-way, because it's a dangerous road, and even with a sidewalk.
I've talked to many people that have.
With the new highway,
I
too.
do. I agree with you, Fred. Many people do use it now because there's no alternative.
Right.
If we can provide an alternative, that might work.
Stuart, would the pathway proposed deflect traffic off of that road? I mean, a lot of times there's safe passage, but we'll see people, follow a natural route to where they're going. Similar to discussions we've had about the underpass versus, the.
There's
Crooked
already
Drive
people that
across.
intend to do that.
Yeah,
not gonna use that.
They just ignore you know, or
Well,
they don't, it's not obvious, if there's a way to, is
Well, I
there a
think,
way to
I think
follow
you're, I think there is a way to make it obvious. I think there is a way, I mean, the Applegate, Housing Vermont, who is one of the principals in Applegate, is very much in favor of the project and is willing to work with the town to create the project between Applegate and Willowbrook. The pathway along the old railroad right-of-way is probably another few years out, but once they're done, I think it's a pretty logical path to take, rather than being up on that highway. It's a high-elevation highway. There is really little or no protection as you move along the shoulders. Both sides bank off.
And it's dark.
The drainage courses.
No, I've been out
That's
there.
true. That's not-
I was there at a collision once and I stopped and there was no place to go. You're standing there in the middle of the road, there's no place to.
That's right. And we recognize that. And we're hopeful that with these changes, with the internal pathways we're talking about, the school system will no longer have to bus kids from Applegate to Molly Stark, which is what they do now.
That's another dangerous thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to drive bus, and I have my friends down there, and they tell stories about,
Yeah.
you know, everywhere they don't stop for the lights, but
We've got
It's pretty tricky
the
up
school
there.
zone is 25 miles an hour, but as soon as they get past there, it is excessive speed along that road.
Well, 35 maximum.
yeah, and some of them are doing 50.
Right, they're going faster. It's set, I know what the speed limit is there.
Yeah.
Maybe we could get the little,
We can put the card out
Cart
there.
up there.
And
See how it
we
slows
can
it down.
track it.
Yeah, it's a shortcut. And whenever a road is a shortcut, you're gonna have people that tend to
Speed.
they're in a
shorten the
hurry.
shortcut.
Yeah.
That's why they're,
Yeah.
to use a shortcut is because they're in a
Right. So
hurry.
I don't think that's a bad idea.
We
I
can
mean,
put the
Fred-
speed card out there.
Okay, let's do that, see if we control that, the fast speed going around there, but,
Fred has a sizable amount of names with him,
Yeah.
where people would like to see us take some action down there.
it's been a long time, we've been trying to get that rail spur, and finally, it looks like we're gonna be successful in doing so, so that's gonna help some of the problem. And,
People are concerned with that not being lighted,
right,
Yeah.
right,
and it is on the other side of the creek from Willowbrook,
right,
so
pretty tough. Okay,
it's tough anyway you look at it, yeah.
take a look at it, we'll get the speed card out there, at least try to control the speeders that are coming through there right now, until we get the other things in place.
I'll speak with Mr. Doucette again, too. There's
Okay.
a person that's willing to let them park in their driveway.
Okay,
It's kind of a good
Yeah,
spot where
yeah.
they can start catching these people. and
Right.
Maybe we can get the word out on that there's going to be
Okay.
radar up there.
yep,
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Fred.
thanks. Okay, Joanne, you wanna come up now?
Take two.
Hi, it's Joanne Ehrenhaus, the Director of the Bennington Area Chamber of Commerce here in Bennington, Vermont. And as everyone knows from my previous presentation before the camera, we're actually going to have two really nice events here in early December. We have the official Town and Vets Home tree lighting ceremony on December 4th at 5:30. So everybody should come to the gazebo on the grounds of the Veterans Home here in Bennington. There'll be a lovely tree lighting by someone special. And also, we will have the high school chorus. They'll be singing and providing holiday music for us. There'll be the color guard, and so it'll be a nice way to kick off the holiday season here in Bennington. Everybody's invited, so we'll look for you 5:30, December 4th. Then on December 7th, which is a Saturday, come to the William Morse State Airport here in Bennington at 1 o'clock. There'll be a skydiving Santa. So he's going to try to aim for the crowd. So everybody come, form a tight-knit group, and wear something colorful so he can find you. And let's see Santa float into town. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Joanne. Any other citizens? John? John, you gotta come up to the mic, please.
Well, it's just about Joanne again. It's still not being filmed at home.
It's not being filmed?
You're not receiving this, so
Okay,
just wanted you to know, nobody at home is saying anything.
all right,
Working on it.
okay. Any other citizens, have anything? Come on up, well, come up to the mic, even though they can't hear you.
And this mic isn't working either.
I've got three things.
Give us your name, please.
My name's Loyal Westcott. I'm from Bennington. I've got three laws that I'm trying to get the town to pass. I did check out and find out from legislators and from some town officials, you guys do have the right to impose the 1,000 feet law for sex offenders. Now, I gave Mr. Joseph Krosick Jr. the copy, and you'll see there's been 17 people raped in a 3-month period. The other thing is, we got a handful of landlords who are knowingly and willingly renting to sex offenders and drug dealers and everything else, and when they're arrested, they're not evicting them. Now, on the second one that has the 2 pages, on the bottom of the first page, it says, in Vermont, because White River Junction is Vermont state, says the landlord can evict you even before you're found guilty in a court of law, because they can be held liable. The 3 campground people did it. It is legal.
Stu, is that true? I wouldn't be able to tell you that
Presumption of
right off the
innocence
top of my.
seems to-
Well,
in my
first,
years.
well, you know, this is something, he's just given us the documents today. I'll give this to the town manager, we'll give it to our attorney for him to look at it, and we'll come up with an answer on it, okay?
The other thing is, because we got a handful of landlords that are putting our public in danger by renting to violent criminals, and they can't say they don't know, because some of them, they know are on probation or
Okay.
parole. Okay, now, we got one dead at 337 School Street. How many more people got to die before we say enough? How many people got to be raped before we say enough? We can clean our town up if we mandate that all landlords must do a criminal background check. In the event they don't do it, and they continue to rent to these violent criminals, incite a $10,000 fine for each violation. I have checked that out, it is legal to enforce,
Okay, we'll give this to our attorney, get his recommendation, have him verify all this stuff,
okay?
and we'll see which way we can go on this thing.
Thank
Okay?
you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other citizens out there? Okay, seeing none. Are we back up on, we don't know if we're on yet. Okay. You're on. We're on? Good. Next item, item 5, the William H. Morris Airport's presentation. Who's going to be doing that? So I understand you're a new arrival in Bennington?
Yes, sir.
So welcome to Bennington, and why don't you give us your name and go on with your presentation?
My name is Darren Lofton. I'm the airport manager. I've been the airport manager at William H. Morris for about 4 weeks now. And I really enjoy the job. It's one of the most beautiful airports I've ever worked at. My wife and I love the town, met some of the nicest people we've ever met in this town, and we'd like to stay for a long time. And in order for that to happen, you know, the airport has to be a successful place. And so when I was hired by the state to take the position of airport manager, I looked at the condition of the airport and the lack of customers and the lack of business that was being done there on a daily basis. And I basically just came up with a plan on my own, a 2-phase plan, and I'm open to suggestions, you know, by any members of the select board here and any members of the local community.
Okay.
But what I've done so far is the first phase was just to clean up the terminal. You know, the terminal is a public access area, and it was pretty dirty when I took the job there. I think for years now it's been used basically for a hub, you know, for different businesses that have been there. And it may have not been set up as an attractive place for, you know, the local public to bring their aircraft and some of the surrounding areas, you know. And Bennington has so much to offer that I thought that, first of all, you know, just cleaning up the terminal building itself and making it presentable to customers would help. I've done that now. I've actually thrown away 4 dumpsters of trash. I had to call the people out 3 times, you know, to keep hauling the trash off. It's just things that have been there over the years, you know, for 20 years now, and left behind by different businesses that have been in the terminal building there. Once that's accomplished, I have the building clean. The next thing I would like to do is bring in some more modern furniture, some more modern equipment, something to make the you know, a lot of people that, I'll back up a little bit, a lot of people that own airplanes, corporate airplanes, private airplanes, they look for a reason to fly from point A to point B. And if you can offer them the smallest reason, they'll fly just to see what's going on, you know, at the terminal, you know, in the next state over, in the next town over. And so I thought it would be a good idea. I asked the state if I could put new furniture in the terminal building. And right now, the state has allocated funds, and they have the funds to do, I guess we call a mini renovation to the terminal building. And so we're going to put in new modern furniture. We're going to have a bagel bar downstairs with coffee and, you know, refreshments. We're going to put in Sonos speakers so we can play, you know, soft music in the terminal area. Someone comes in with their Apple, you know, their iPad or Wi-Fi equipment, they can put on the music of their choice while they're sitting there. We're making a breakfast nook in the corner, and there's going to be, you know, there's high-speed internet to pilots that come through and customers that come through. And then upstairs, there's a second floor area that hasn't been utilized at all, so I thought we would take the existing furniture, which is really not in that bad of shape, it's just kind of outdated. We're going to move that upstairs and create a pilot's lounge. In the pilot's lounge and downstairs, we're going to have the Sonos speakers and large screen, flat screen monitors on the wall. The one downstairs is going to be a 55-inch flat screen monitor. I just ordered it last week. And on that monitor, I would like to display the different businesses that are at the airport. There's a flight school at the airport right now that a lot of people, I don't know if they're aware of or not, Green Mountain Flight Training. There's a business that I've started. It's called New England Airmotive, and we provide, you know, maintenance services to corporate and smaller type privately owned aircraft. There's a club at the airport, the Experimental Aircraft Association, and a lot of people don't realize these things are at the airport. So I'd like to use the flat screen monitor as a display of the local businesses and clubs that are at the Bennington Airport, and also to display the weather at the local airports, so when pilots come through, they can look at the screen and, you know, get an idea of what the weather is like to where they're flying. We're going to place security cameras. Actually, the man is coming tomorrow to have security cameras in the building. So as I looked at the terminal, I thought, you know, it's a nice building, but it doesn't have a lot of decoration. And so I had the idea to call the local artist guilds, the art museums, the local artists, and to give them, in a way, to get the community involved with the airport, to give them the opportunity to display their works of art at the airport. And so far, I've had a really good response to that. No one has come up yet to look, but I did, the Artists Guild, the Art Museum, they both told me that after the Thanksgiving holiday was over, they would like to come up and see, you know, if they have some local artists that could put works of art such as pictures, pottery, things like of this nature, and allow them to put their art in the terminal with, you know, with price tags, with and their name, and I could even have a map there on how to get to their place of business. So all of this is geared to try to bring in more customers and more revenue to the airport. And also one of the things that I've done is my friend Joanne from the Chamber of Commerce mentioned, where Santa Claus is going to skydive into the airport on December 7th. And it's just an ideal that, well, actually there might be children watching. So actually Santa Claus called me, and there was a problem with the naughty and the good list. And for some reason the elves got it messed up for Bennington. So he called me and asked, the North Pole is on an emergency alert situation right now, and Santa Claus is going to fly down here and straighten it out. So he's not even going to wait until the plane hits the ground. He's going to just jump out. And the public is invited. I would like to see if there's any local restaurants or maybe coffee shops that would like to volunteer to come out and serve coffee or hot chocolate. Any of the nonprofit organizations are invited to come out and participate in that. And the reason I say nonprofit is because any of the for-profit companies would have to get a permit through the state to sell at the airport, and there's just not enough time. The matter is urgent. We've got to get the naughty and nice list straightened out. But these are just some things some ideals I've come up with to try to help the airport to bring some life back into it. We had a meeting on the 20th of November. I invited the Civil Air Patrol. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Civil Air Patrol, but I invited them to attend. Two of their members flew one of their 182s down here and attended, and I invited the Experimental Aircraft Association to attend, and we had about 21 people there for that meeting. It was a very successful meeting, and they're all members of the community. They all want to see the airport grow and be successful. Many of them said that they would join the Civil Air Patrol, and the Civil Air Patrol can bring a lot of good things to the community here. And I've seen the Civil Air Patrol at Springfield, Vermont. I maintained their aircraft and their gliders while they had a 2-week glider school and an academy there for like high school students. And it was well ran. It's a really good organization, and I'd like to see that happen here at this airport. Not only because it brings business to my business, New England Aeromotive, but it also just helps get the community involved and people involved in the airport. And that's about, there's one more thing. I'm going to be coming up with one event a month, and that's my personal goal, starting with, of course, the Santa Claus Sky Drop. And it's hard to do that. There's a lot of planning involved. I'm hoping, I've contacted the local firefighters, the fire station, and they advised me that was actually in a rural Bennington fire station area, and said, and I've put in a phone call to them. I'd like to see if possibly they could come up for the event on December 7th and help pass out candy, and not only that, but help kind of monitor the situation. If there's any emergencies, they're already there. They're already on site. And in order to see these things happen and to see the airport grow, we need to develop an airport advisory board. And usually on an airport advisory board, it's usually made up of a pilot, a business owner who has a business at the airport, a member of the Chamber of Commerce, someone from the Economic Development, someone from the Select Board, and someone from the Regional Planning Commission. And if that would be something that any of you would be interested in, on the Select Board, becoming a member of the Airport Commission, that would be really helpful to the growth of the airport. And I believe that's, all that I have. I think maybe you had some questions for me.
Have you had a chance to see our town plan yet? We have a section on the airport in our town plan.
No, sir, no.
You need to get a hold of, I think, our zoning administrator and assistant town manager, Dan Monks, in town office, and look at that. We talk about the airport. You ought to bounce your plan against what we've got in there, and we're in the process, coming up soon, of revising the town plan, so the timing is good to get your input into that thing. Any other board members?
You have,
Greg? Tom?
I've heard these fly-ins, that they have around the country.
Yes.
Is that something that this airport could support?
Yes,
What is
fly-
it? What is a fly-in?
Okay, what a fly-in is, you can go to a site, socialflight.com, and it'll show a little yellow airplane everywhere there's a fly-in. And the entire country is on a map and covered in these little yellow airplanes. And basically what a fly-in is, and I have an ideal for next month's event, if I could have some sponsors and some help. I thought, this is the maple syrup capital of the world, so why don't we have a French toast fly-in? Basically what a fly-in, they have potluck fly-ins, they have different fly-ins where actually, the potluck, for instance, owners of single-engine private aircraft will cook a crock pot of, let's say, their favorite chili, or usually it's deer chili. They put the lid on and duct tape the lid on and put it in the seat, and they'll fly to where the fly-in is. And you just have a potluck meeting with all the local pilots. And Springfield, Vermont had one last week, and they had 26 aircraft show up. So when you get 26 aircraft at one airport, and let's say everybody comes inside, and then they see the local artwork. They see one of the things I want to do with the downstairs is have a board where we can put the flyers of the local attractions, and people begin to see that, and they fly here, and then all of a sudden they say, oh, well, there's a reason to fly from point A to point B. I want to come back and I want to go visit the art museum. I want to visit, the Bennington Museum. I want to go golfing over here, so the fly-ins are important to get customers to the airport. I plan on either having an event or a fly-in once a month right now. So.
Greg?
Couple of things. I attended earlier this year, Joanne was involved in the State Chamber of Commerce, hosted the Vermont Aeronautics and Aerospace Show at the airport in the hangar. It's really a great space to put in, I've worked in there before. When you see it cleaned up and used as a trade show, it's really an impressive space. A lot of people, I'm sure, haven't been in there, and it's a lot bigger than it looks from the parking lot. But Air Now used to pretty much occupy the whole airport. The public space in the airport was very small at that time. Air Now is now gone. Is these renovations you're talking about, are you expanding the public space in the airport, or is it pretty much the same as it's been? It was just really that walk-through to the counter was the only...
Right. The walk-through to the counter and well, it's not public space. The walk-through to the counter and the upstairs area, the
Okay.
pilot's lounge,
Right.
that is the public space.
Okay.
The hangar that's attached right next to that is my business, New England Aeromotive.
Okay.
Air Now still owns the large hangar on the end. I believe he has plans to use that largely for storage. I'm not sure of all the details of that plan, but there are plans in the works. Let me back up a little bit. There's plans in the works to try to build some larger hangars out there. There's footprints, there's areas out there of land where large hangars could be built. And the state has had people down, engineers, just 2 weeks ago, and they were looking at how many aircraft are based at the field and the need. Because if there's a need for more hangar space, then the FAA, of course, will look at that, and we can apply for a grant and receive money, to have the hangars built. Well, right now I have a waiting list of 6 aircraft who I have no space for at the airport. So there is a need, and the state recognizes that. Guy Ruel, the state aeronautics administrator, has a plan that within 9 months he's going to have, let me be sure I don't misquote him here, in 9 months there'll be a master plan to reflect the changes. And then within 1 year, he wants to apply for a grant for design and permitting. So he's moving forward with these plans, but it just takes time, yes.
Okay. Anyone else? Welcome in, Bennington, and thanks a lot for coming here tonight.
Appreciate it.
Give us an update. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, next item on agenda is ordinance amendment, Article 17-4. We've asked our police chief to come and talk tonight. So, Paul, do you want to come up here? We know that you've appeared on the radio with the town manager to talk about this ordinance, but a lot of people have not heard our police chief's position on this ordinance, whether there's a need for it, and anything that has to do with the enforcing of the ordinance itself. So you want to go ahead and start addressing those issues, please?
Absolutely. A while back, Town Manager Stuart Hurd contacted me, referenced some concerns about panhandling in the Bennington area. Told me he had been approached, and then he directed Assistant Town Manager Dan Monks to see if we could find a sample ordinance in Vermont. He did ask me for my opinion. This is something that we've been dealing with now for several years, where we've had people in a position where they're panhandling in different areas in and around Bennington. And usually what happens is if we receive a complaint or if the officers contact these people while out on patrol, we do ask them to move along. Normally, people will move along, but very shortly thereafter, they're right back because we don't have the tool that we need to issue a violation or take care of it in an appropriate manner. So I was pleased when the town manager proposed this ordinance. I did have an opportunity to review it. I know that it has been talked about quite a bit in and around Bennington. You are correct, Mr. Krozik. Mr. Hurd and I did appear on the local radio. We've done some interviews with Patrick McCardle from the Rutland Herald, and I know there's been some articles printed. I do support the ordinance. I think that the Bennington Police Department needs a tool to enforce the panhandling situation that we're currently starting to experience. It's not something that we're overrun with. I think it's an ordinance that we can utilize to move people along. In my position, I would direct my people to issue a warning. We do have a computer system that will allow us to insert the fact that someone has been warned, and the next time they can receive the municipal violation for being in violation of Article 17-4. So again, I would ask that the Select Board support this and give the police department the tool that they need to enforce this. It's very unnerving. I think it's a quality of life issue that we experience here in Bennington. When you drive down Northside Drive and you're at a traffic light and someone asks you for money, it's very unnerving. I can tell you that this summer, personally, I experienced that while attempting to teach my daughter to drive, and was approached by an individual, asking for money. And when we noticed that situation, again, this is myself personally, Catherine wanted to actually get in the right lane and make a right-hand turn so we didn't have to deal with that. So again, it's unnerving. I think that, people that are out there, maybe they don't realize it or what have you. So I do think, again, that we need this tool. There are a lot of public services, Mr. Krozik and the other members of the Select Board, that are available here in Bennington. And I think that if people are out panhandling and asking for money because they need food, the officers that work for me, I take great pride in being able to help people using the members of the police department. There are several food pantries in and around this community that are open on certain days. The officers on the day shift do occasionally, when they come in contact with these people, refer them to the soup kitchen right down the road here, and where they serve 2 meals a day. So, there are other means to receive assistance if in fact that's really the case. So again, I would ask that you support this and adopt the ordinance so that we have a tool that we need to work with so that we can issue the municipal violation if in fact we need to do that, so that there is some type of penalty.
How about the other side of the ordinance dealing with the living in automobiles on public highways, streets and highways?
That piece of the ordinance, we don't see a lot of people living in their cars. Does it happen? Yes, it does happen. But again, these are people that we can have professional contact with, and we can put them in the right direction and get them some type of assistance. We are the hub of services for Bennington County. People come here because they know that they can receive services. Sometimes they just need that little push to be put in the right direction. And again, that's what my officers, that is the intent of the initial contact, is to provide people with services. That's what we're doing now. But I think that if people can't come into compliance and don't move along, then we need something, a tool such as this, for enforcement action.
Okay. Tom, you had questions?
Yeah, it sort of opens the discussion. Everybody join in, please. Is this the same group that we're seeing over and over, the same recidivist type of individual or individuals? Because I'm not really comfortable with an ordinance that's dealing with 2, 3, or 4 individuals, which we may see over and over. is this a new group that we should be more aware of?
I think it started, again, it started a couple of years ago where, we've had some contact on Main Street where people have asked for money when people come out of restaurants. And we've seen it blossom a little bit, where now it's down on the North Side Drive area. This time of year, we don't see it as much. We see it in the spring and in the summer. Without getting into too many details, I mean, we had a gentleman, we asked him, or one of the officers, I didn't personally, asked him, why do you come to Bennington? And his answer was, because we can do this and no one bothers us. And so, I don't want it to get to the point where all of a sudden, we're bringing our friends and the same type of behavior is continuing. I think that this is a problem that we're seeing. We've seen it grow over the last couple of years, and I think it's something that we need to get out in front of so that we don't have a bunch of people panhandling on North Side Drive or on Main Street or where have you. I think we need to prevent that from happening.
And not to belabor the point, but there's a panhandling solicitation, and then we have in the proposed ordinance the aggressive panhandling. They're sort of distinctly dealt with within the suggested ordinance. Are these individuals solicitors, panhandlers, or are they aggressive individuals looking and basically being in a disorderly conduct mode?
Well, it can be both, Tom. And I think what happens is, we're looking to not have to actually make a physical arrest, a custodial arrest, give someone a citation where now they have to go to court and they have to go through the legal system and pay some type of fine and now have a criminal record. I mean, we've seen over the last several years here in the state of Vermont where we have started to decriminalize things to prevent people that are generally good in nature from getting some type of criminal record. And that is why when Mr. Hurd and I spoke about this, I fully supported a civil municipal ordinance so that we didn't have to go out and issue criminal citations to these people. One, it ties up our resources, quite honestly. And two, you're giving someone a criminal record, and in fact, they might just need some type of guidance to get public assistance or referral to a food pantry or something like that. I mean, that's my concern here. I don't want to have to give someone a citation. Now they have a criminal record because maybe they were down on their luck or they needed some other type of assistance. And if they choose not to take our assistance seriously, then we need the tool to move them along without having to place that physical arrest. I mean, I understand completely what you're saying. I mean, disorderly conduct is pretty vague. You know that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's threatening and tumultuous behavior perceived by a victim. So, I mean, disorderly conduct can be a lot of things. And again, I think by adding the threatening behavior and being able to issue a municipal violation for that, it would curb a criminal arrest and prevent someone from having a criminal history, which again, it seems to be what the state of Vermont is doing.
I guess I'm concerned about those valuable resources, whether or not we're using them for basically, again, someone said earlier, using a cannon to get to the fly. And
right, but again, it's a quality of life issue, and we get the complaints, and people will say, well, why aren't the police able to do anything about this, or better yet, why aren't the police doing anything about this? And, it's because we don't have the tool that we need to actually move someone along. As I said, some of these people we speak to, and we place offers, and they're right back, and all we can do is ask them to move along again. We need something that's a little bit sharper than that, and if they don't want to listen, so we can issue the paperwork, and there's a violation.
And again, maybe I misunderstood, but when this was first presented by Stu, it was for public property, okay? But I do understand now that it basically can also impact on private property, because when you first presented it was only in public areas controlled by the municipality.
And I think that's still the intent, Tom. I reread today the public places definition, and it is rather broad. But our concerns are those people who are in the state highway right-of-way, town highway rights-of-way, on the sidewalk, on municipal property, otherwise, parking lots, wherever they might be. That's where we want to be able to enforce it. If in fact someone is on the front steps of a Walmart or a Price Chopper and they're panhandling there, That's up to the management of that corporation to move them along. They can do that by calling the police and issuing a no trespass.
Right. But that's not the ordinance.
But that's not this ordinance, but that takes us into the whole criminal,
Right.
now it becomes a criminal issue. So our goal is to really focus on the publicly owned properties where these folks can set up and essentially create problems for people who are visiting the community or who live in the community or are simply trying to go about their business.
Hang on, Tom's got the
I
floor.
just want to follow on that discussion, because I understand the ordinances to really deal with those individuals which aggressively try to panhandle or solicit. And I think you mentioned yourself that someone could come up to you on the street and in a courteous manner solicit, and you could say yes or no. I mean, you said that in the minutes that were reported on the 11th.
That's correct.
That would be pretty much impossible on our public streets, because it's something about 15 feet from any doorway, so no one can come up to Stu Hurd on the street because pretty much everything's 15 feet from a doorway. Is that something that we really need to regulate?
Well, I think that, once again, it's like any municipal ordinance. We don't have sufficient manpower to enforce every ordinance that we have 24/7, all the time. So if I'm walking down the street and I'm solicited by an individual, regardless how aggressive he becomes, and I simply say, no, thank you, and walk away, that may be fine for me. If I'm 20 years older and I'm a little infirm, and that person starts to follow me, and look, can I have $5? Can I have $2? Can I have what? That becomes a problem for the person on the street, and they need to have some way to get the protection that they should be afforded by a municipality. And, you know, whether that's they go into a store and have the store call the police and say, this guy's waiting outside for me, he's followed me all the way up the street. We need to be able to address that, Tom, and we can't do that now. We don't.
I think I beg to differ. I think you could through a disorderly conduct issue, that kind of situation.
Well, yeah, but that becomes, you know, I think
Yeah,
Paul
I know.
is correct.
I
How
understand what you're saying.
fine a line, and then that becomes a criminal issue. And do we want to create criminal violations when a civil violation might work?
Does disorderly conduct fall, Paul, you and I were CJ majors at SVC together, and correct me if I'm wrong, but disorderly conduct does not necessarily mean a criminal conviction. It could be a civil fine as well.
But if we cite someone for disorderly conduct and we send them to the Bennington Superior Court Criminal Division, they are going to criminal court.
Okay, well, you bring up a very important point, because this is something that, you know, in the 6 years that I've been on the street as a food vendor, I can count on one hand the number of times that I've seen panhandling. Now, granted, I'm in a very small part of the downtown, but I very rarely see it. And furthermore, you know, I've spoken with several of the police officers in your department about this, and we're talking about a law that really is, or an ordinance that is going to apply to 3 primary offenders in the downtown, all 3 of whom have been adjudicated incompetent. And each and every time that they've been brought to the state's attorney with charges against them, those charges are dismissed. So when we talk about the waste of resources against 3 people that this is primarily targeted at, we're compounding it. Now, you just said a minute ago that we don't currently have the resources to enforce the ordinance that we already have. And we're gonna add another ordinance that has no teeth to it, really?
Well, but it does, Jim. It has the teeth that all municipal civil violations have. It allows us to levy a fine
You're
should.
gonna fine a beggar? I mean, that's the whole
Let him-
illogical
let
thing
him
about
answer.
this. I apologize, but that's.
Well,
that's the whole
we'll
second
fine
point.
a beggar if he doesn't move on.
How is a beggar gonna pay a fine?
So is the standard for law only be enforced if someone can pay the fine?
No, that's not it. The point here is that we're targeting a group that that, on the face of it, has no money to pay a fine.
That's not true,
And by
Jim.
and large, these people that are committing these offenses are incompetent,
I don't know where you got your information, but I don't believe that's
directly
true.
from police officers.
Well,
Well, if I may,
that's not true.
Wait, hang on. Let's
Okay.
get control of this.
yeah.
Are you finished?
Yes. for now.
Stuart, you answered. John, you had questions of Paul before we get to other ones that didn't.
Yeah, I did. My three main concerns are the business owners, the people trying to enjoy the town of Bennington, which could be citizens or people visiting, and the people that are actually out there begging. So with this ordinance, I think that we give you the tool to help out the business owner and to help out the people trying to enjoy Bennington. I know that when I walk around other cities, I walk with my head down because whether it be polite or impolite, I don't want to be asked for money. I'll donate to charities, I'll donate to other causes, but I don't want to be walking out on a Friday night trying to enjoy my time, going out to dinner with my family or whatever, just to be stopped. So my main concern here is with the people that are asking and how this ordinance is going to help them. I know we said there's a warning system, we'll ask them to move along, and then afterwards we'll have to use this to enforce this ordinance. But when we ask them to move it along, are we going to try and help these people and help get them what they need? That was my main concern when everybody came up last 2 weeks ago. I wanted to make sure that if they need food, we bring them to a place where they can get food. If they need shelter, we bring them to a place where they can get that, and then have someone else really try and help them out, so then we can deal with the people that are actually in need, and then find the people that are just repeat offenders. So how are we going to try and work that into the system?
Again, I mean, utilizing the ordinance as a tool and being able to instruct people about the different locations in Bennington or surrounding areas where they can receive some type of assistance, that is part of the plan. And, and again, educating the officers if and when the ordinance is changed. We always have a policy where we take the ordinance, we review all the changes, the officers have an opportunity to ask questions about that through their supervisor, and if they can't answer them, then they get directed to me. So, education of the officers is going to be a piece of this. And again, at the same time, our goal is to provide any assistance to people that actually are in need. And that's the way we're gonna handle this.
So when working with these people on the street, are you guys prepared to also work with the local groups that are out there ready to help them as well?
Yes, in fact, I did not bring it with me tonight. I have a copy of the locations and times of the different food pantries that are available to Bennington and North Bennington residents and people in our area that, for example, the church in North Bennington services people that are in North Bennington and Shasbury area. Here in Bennington at St. Francis, they service people here in Bennington. We have other food pantries that are available. We have the soup kitchen. I mean, there are different options and alternatives available to put people in the right direction other than, levying some type of fine. But they have to want to take that advice. You cannot stand outside of a business and ask people for money and turn around and take your cell phone out of your pocket and make a telephone call. You can't stand outside of the business and ask people for money and then walk over to another convenience store at the end of your day and buy beer and cigarettes with the money that you've received from panhandling. That's not the point of the assistance is for the people that want it, need it, and will take our direction and go to the food pantries in the areas where they can obtain assistance. And that's the goal here is to try to help these people, not just levy fines against people that can't pay them. Again, the examples can go on, but there are people that take advantage of others, and that's what we're trying to prevent.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I wanted to hear. I was fairly certain that we shared that opinion. I just definitely wanted to hear it from you. And then the other question that I had for you was across the state, I'm sure you communicate with a number of other towns, or even further widespread. How has this been implemented in other towns or cities, and has it helped them out as well?
Well, again, I have some personal experience, not just in the state here, but I've been to other locations, John, probably just like you, where, for example, 2 years ago, I traveled to a location where people that were technically panhandling had to offer something in exchange for money. And the uniformed officers, they had these huge ticket books and they had them in their back pockets. I have no intentions of sending my guys out with my officers out with these huge ticket books. But they also were aware that the police were there, and if they got caught asking for money, the officer would come over and issue the violation. So, I mean, it does work. Most recently, I was off at training last week, and I was telling Mr. Hurd that I was approached coming out of a restaurant and asked if I had $5. It's very unnerving, even for somebody like myself who, you know, is in fairly good shape and could probably defend myself. But at the same time, I shouldn't have to feel like that. And I don't want people in our community feeling like they can't go shopping on Main Street and visit our local merchants because they're going to get asked for money and they're going to feel intimidated. We need the tool to make our community feel safer. Since this has come up, I've received numerous phone calls at the office thanking me for my support and being vocal on the radio station and with the Rutland Herald. People have praised what the board is doing and taking a very serious look at this and not just saying, oh, boom, we need another ordinance. I think you guys have done a wonderful job taking a good, serious, hard look at this issue. But we need the tool to prevent the issue from developing further.
One last thing that you kind of struck on there, entertainment. If someone's playing a musical instrument with their case open, is that panhandling? Or is it entertainment at that point? Sorry if it's a loaded question, it's just.
You know, I honestly don't know the answer to that. I mean, you know, here we can't place things out on the sidewalk that will impede the flow of traffic on the sidewalk. I think that we're covered in another part of the ordinance with something like that from happening. It's no different than down in New York City or Washington, D.C., where they come out with a squirt bottle and squirt your windshield and they hold you up, you know, and clean your windshield. I mean, we can't have that because that's a form of disorderly conduct because we're impeding the flow of traffic. I mean, so there's a lot of what-ifs, John, and I think that's why the way this ordinance is written, I think it's very clear as to what can and cannot happen. So to answer your question about entertainment, it can't happen on the sidewalks in Bennington.
Okay. Thank
Greg?
you for coming in.
To me, most of this is about behavior. I mean, whether it's several people or a lot of people or a growing problem, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of our resources in your department are spent pursuing people who just aren't behaving in the normal social convention, respecting other people's property, respecting noise, respecting their landlords, et cetera. And to me, this ordinance basically defines space. It defines some personal space that people get when they come out of their residence, when they come out of their buildings. I mean, I've had a lot of calls as well, some looking for a lot more aggressive legislation, which I don't agree with. But I have talked to people who reside downtown and come down and they come to their front door and they're approached immediately walking out their front door in the morning, morning going to school, coming home, finding people in their doorway and things like that. And to me, to leave that to an arbitrary decision of who belongs and who doesn't is really where the danger of rights infringement comes from. I mean, I think as a police department, doesn't it help you to have a clear definition of what is defined as acceptable behavior in the population to enforce, instead of somebody making a definition on how somebody's dressed, what they look like, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, we're basically planting out space here and saying you cannot solicit. Doesn't mean panhandling, or, it doesn't distinguish between panhandling or selling Bibles or looking for petitions or anything. It's just a clear definition of how much space we need to give people to come and go from buildings.
Right.
And so, I have seen it, I have heard about it a lot. I'm convinced that the situation does exist, but I think the ordinance really addresses behavior. And I don't really like legislating about behavior because I think that most people know what good behavior and bad behavior is, but it seems to be whether it's smoking in playgrounds or drinking in public or things like that, it seems to happen on a regular basis. So I don't think this is unprecedented in any way. Am I wrong?
No, I agree with you, and I think that people do have the opportunity to make choices, and people know what is acceptable behavior. Doesn't need to be. I don't think we need to address the good and the bad. What's acceptable? Right. And sometimes people make choices that are not acceptable, and there may need to be a consequence for that type of behavior. And I think that's what this ordinance is attempting to address, again, to give us the tool, law enforcement the tool, to take appropriate action if deemed necessary.
You say something else?
Stu and I had a conversation earlier, or late last week, earlier this week, or no, late last week, about one particular individual who was a repeat offender, for lack of a better phrase, and he was confronted by his landlord and said, knock it off, this individual, and he did. And I just want to point out that, sometimes it just takes standing up to somebody and saying, all right, enough's enough, and it usually works. Furthermore, Chief, I want to get this clear that, with respect to the application of this ordinance, you wouldn't necessarily go towards a fine, but you would devote town time and resources to guiding someone to an appropriate place like UCS or food pantries, things like that.
We're doing that now, Jim. I mean,
Okay.
we have people that come into the community that need assistance. I'll give you a great example. This evening, I spent 40 minutes with an individual who needed someone to talk to and problems. Quite honestly, I wasn't on the clock. I was waiting for the board meeting to begin, so I took the opportunity to meet with the person. And like I said, I mean, that's what I would prefer, and that's what I would like my officers to do, is to try to educate people and let them know what services are available. Again, this isn't something that we're gonna, we're not taking the playbook and running down the street with it and saying, okay, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad. It just gives us the tool. I mean, we will continue to help people. Again, I mean, we look at the demographics in this community, and we have a lot of people in need in our community. There's absolutely no doubt about it, whether it's financial or psychological or what have you. And we always try to put these people in the right direction. We take people to the hospital. The police take people to the hospital on a regular basis. We get several calls a week, but we transport people to the hospital so that they can be medically cleared and screened by United Counseling Service. So again, it's not about just going out and whipping out the ticket book and writing violations. But again, if people don't act appropriately and they don't make those good choices, then we need something some type of action that we can take to prevent this from happening. I understand what you're saying. Sometimes when you just tell people, sure, there are people like that will heed the warning and move on or change their behavior because you've gotten them to understand. But there's other people that are going to say, who are you? Mm-hmm. And, those are the people that need to be dealt with differently.
All right, just a follow-up question for you, and this may go more towards budgetary concerns. And you and I have spoken about this before, and it's about manpower. I remember as a kid, there was John Ryan, Billy Pulver, Jimmy DeLong, who walked the beat in the downtown. And so my question to you is, how difficult would it be to restore that to the downtown? Is it a budgetary concern? Because I can tell you from my own personal experience as a kid, getting caught chucking snowballs by Billy Pulver with the threat that he was going to call my father that night. He never did, but it kept me in line, and I wonder if we couldn't do that as well.
I think part of the problem is now some of the parents are out chucking the same snowballs with the kids. So, no, all kidding aside, I mean, I would like to save that thought for budget time. I have a proposal for you, for the members of the board and for the community that will address some of the issues that you're talking about. We do, at times throughout the summer, we have the bikes out, we have people out on foot patrol. A lot of times during the day, it depends on what's going on. You might not see it, but on evenings and occasionally on the midnight shift, the officers are out doing the foot beat thing downtown. But then at the same time, Jim, we also have to worry about, North Side Drive there's a lot of traffic. For example, this week, I mean, good gosh, there's so many stores that are going to be open now on Thanksgiving and all the way throughout the night. Stuart and I, or Mr. Hurd and I, spoke today about putting on some additional resources because it's not just Walmart now. It's Kmart, Walmart, JCPenney, Radio Shack, and the list goes on. Mm-hmm. And we have to protect that.
Maybe we should have an ordinance. Yeah, not allowing it.
We have to, we have to protect that, and there has to be some type of deterrence for shoplifting and things of that nature. So, yeah. So we'll save that thought for January.
Is that it? Sharon, you have anything?
No, I don't.
Okay, I'm going to allow people to come up and talk again. This is the fourth time, but I would ask you, if you've already covered this board, you don't need to repeat it again, the same story. And please, last time some people got a little hot and bothered, keep it down. I don't want any disorderly conduct here, even though I do have Paul here, okay? So anybody like to come forward and talk? Lowell, come on.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, excuse me.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Chief.
Paul, you might want to stick around, because you might want to answer questions.
He's giving warnings, all right.
Talking about the panhandling, my name's Loyal Westcott from Bennington. There are laws that they could already be enforcing. The loitering law, which is a civil fine, the disorderly conduct, which the chief just mentioned, menacing laws when they're threatening to kill people. The ones that are violating it and being aggressive, every one of them gets a disability check. They have access to the proper agencies. They know where they can get food. But they're using it, the money that, when people do get them, to buy alcohol and drugs. Also, menacing laws apply. Terroristic threats applies. They are felonies. They're not being enforced. And that's why they are hardened criminals. One's been arrested for stalking. He violated the stalking order twice after, but because they deemed him mentally incompetent, which I've talked to a legislator about the Mills law. That mandates even if they're mentally incompetent, they still go to jail. Because 70% of stalkers kill their victims if they're not locked away. The other thing is, if they're mentally incompetent, Vermont law says they can be Baker Acted. That's not happening. We need to get them off the streets before they actually kill somebody.
Okay, well, thanks.
Thank you for your time.
Yes. Tracy? Your name, please?
Good evening. My name is Tracy Schwartz, and I just want to talk a little bit about the panhandling, and that there are a few people on Main Street that are doing the panhandling, and I'm on Main Street enough to talk to these people. In the beginning, they were kind of scary to me. I understand you can say no and walk away from them, and I've never had a problem after that. However, working retail downtown 2 weeks ago, I had a man come in, and he said he was down on his luck, his house burned down, he needed money. This was in a store, and I felt like he was backing me into a corner, and I had customers in there, young and old, and I just need to know that there's somebody I can call. I didn't want to stand there and argue with him. I wanted him to leave, but I knew I wouldn't be able to get him out. So I think we do need something just to get these people in the right direction and not into the stores or right in front of the stores. I know that's kind of what people have been saying, but it was scary for me for the first time because when I'm on Main Street, I can walk away. But when I was in the store, I was stuck in the corner.
Okay. Anything else, Trace?
No, that's it.
Thank you, Tracy. Anyone else? Mary?
I am Mary Garish, and I'm not going to repeat what I said last time.
And we read your emails, too.
I know. What I am going to address is the issue of the sleeping in the car provision. And I know that somebody asked questions about that when the chief was up here, and he said, no, I think we need that too. But it wasn't as clearly expressed a need as what I've heard relative to the rest of the statute. One of the things that concerns me relative to the locations, and I understand this was brought up in discussion, and Mr. Hurt said that the goal would be to enforce it on public property. But that's not what it says. So regardless of what the goal is, the goal should match what the ordinance actually says. Because if it doesn't, Then what happens is you have unequal enforcement of it depending on the person or the circumstances, and that's a slippery slope. And as far as the Coalition for the Homeless is concerned, it's really important. People don't have other options than sleeping in their car. I would love it if anyone here could tell me where they're going to put somebody who's sleeping in their car, because I'm here to tell you that very unfortunately, the shelter is overflowing every night. Every shelter is overflowing. The guidelines for getting a motel room from the state are very strict and aren't even available some of the time. And that's all there is. There aren't a lot of options. So as much as I appreciate and respect the police department's desire to point people in the right direction or help them, this is a situation when we're talking about somebody who's homeless and sleeping in their car, that there isn't somewhere to point them because we don't have enough space for everybody. That's why it's essential that they be allowed to sleep in their car. Not that that is ideal. I don't want to see people sleep in their car, but it's better than sleeping outdoors in the middle of the winter. So I would really ask that you consider striking that provision from the panhandling ordinance. I don't see where it goes along with anything else in the ordinance, because we're not talking about a situation where someone is causing people trouble. And as I said in my email to you on the board, I know that folks do come to town in their RVs, which are motor vehicles, and they do stay more than one night. I see them parked in the parking lot. They shop on Main Street. They dine at our restaurants. I love that. I think we all love that. I'm sure the merchants love that. And so we could say, well, we won't enforce it against them. But there again, you can't do that. So I'm asking you to please strike the provision on the sleeping in cars from the ordinance. Thank you.
Anyone else? Want to?
It's the second time we've got speaking public. I would just want to urge you to look at the difference between a panhandler and an aggressive panhandler, or i.e. solicitation. I think there's a big difference between the two. I think the lines here are very cloudy and they're vague, and I don't think that passing ordinances for peaceful panhandling. Person walking down the street, again, asking for a dime, or the person walking down the street demanding the dime. There's a difference, and we do have laws for that. We have laws that protect us, or the police have for tools against aggressive behavior, especially in public. If I walk into Lisa's store and I ask for money, he's breaking the law. She needs to call 911, and he's out of there. He's broken the law. They know what the laws are. They know what they trespass. There's all these different laws. But the main thing is we're trying to regulate homelessness, free speech, and now find out a musician with his standing there playing his guitar, and he's got his guitar case. That's panhandling. Okay, so now that's illegal in Bennington, especially in the Four Corners. It's all the time. We get people come in from out of town just to come in and play. They stick their guitar out there. People throw them a buck or two. That is panhandling. Somebody walking down the street selling pencils. They're not aggressive, say, buy my pencil. They're going, here's my pencils. You give me 25 cents. That's not aggressive behavior. That's part of the fabric of our life, and it's what makes us special. We're all here. We're all together. We're all a group. Please, look at this whole thing and define the aggressive behavior, but leave the non-aggressive people alone. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Come on, all the way back, please.
Good evening. My name's Robert Ebert. Live here in Bennington. I want to thank all of you for all the time and effort you're putting into this strangely controversial issue. I just want to say, you're not here to solve the nation's ills. You're not here to feed the nation's hungry or to house the nation's homeless or to defend the rights of men. You are here to preserve and protect the quality of life for the taxpayers of Bennington. Quite honestly, I don't care if people panhandle as long as they don't do it in Bennington. I don't care if people sleep in their cars as long as they don't do it in Bennington. I just ask that you stay true to the purpose and to the reason you're here, which is to represent and preserve the quality of life for those of us who live in Bennington. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
John Shanahan, I'm the director of the Better Bennington Corporation, the downtown organization, and I won't repeat anything I've said before. I just came up here tonight because entertainment on the street was brought up, called busking, and I just wanted to clarify that the chief is correct that we have to provide 4 feet of egress on the sidewalks, but the town has charged us with coordinating entertainment on the street, and we do allow it as long as it's at one of the bulb outs or in front of the wide sidewalks. So it was brought up that we don't want entertainers. That's crazy. We do. We encourage that, and we bring them here all the time. And they do put out their guitar, open up their hats and stuff for money. So we do promote that. We just want the artists to know that Bennington is a place to entertain on the street. They just do it through our organization, which the town has asked us to oversee.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Chris?
Chris Oldham, Bennington. I can appreciate the position that you're in. As a past board member, I know how difficult it is to make a decision like this. As a resident of Main Street and an employee of Main Street, I've been approached several times, and it's very uncomfortable. So that piece I'm comfortable with. The issue that Mary had brought up, the sleeping in their cars, I have a huge issue with that. And I'm curious to know from the police department, the protocol. What would you do if you approached someone sleeping in a car? Would you tell them to go to the shelter? If the shelter is full, would you tell them to go to the bridge? How do you justify that? How do you tell someone they can't sleep in the car? You have to find somewhere else to go, and it's cold out. The only source of heat is in that car. Could you explain that to me, please?
Paul, you want to come back up here?
So the officers with my agency direct people to the homeless shelter. If that is not available, we do in fact refer over to Brattleboro, and we will also refer over to Albany, you know, and give them some type of hope in one of those directions. I understand it's difficult to send somebody an hour away, but at the same time, you know, they have the opportunity to, and I don't want to be involved in conflict or what have you, but those are the options that we currently have, because if you can sit in the car and have the car run all night, then you have the option and the ability to use the same fuel and either drive to Albany to get assistance or drive to Brattleboro. I'm not aware at this point currently of anything available in Rutland, because Rutland has their own special issues, and I don't believe any of my officers have referred anyone north towards Rutland. But again, Albany, Brattleboro, and that's our options.
You can't do anything, you can't refer them to like a motel or a service,
Well, I
aren't
mean,
you
we
service
have,
officer?
again, and forgive me, I left that part out. I mean, we do have the ability, but those vouchers, they'll get the voucher, and it's only for a very short period of time that they can actually, you know, utilize the voucher. It may be just for the one night. And I understand that, again, without creating conflict, that some people don't like that because it's one night and then we ask them to move along. There are other referrals that we make to social services so that people can go down and sign up for public assistance and things of that nature. We have people locally, or I shouldn't say people, I know of a person locally who opts to reside in their vehicle, and I also know that this person receives public assistance, and chooses to still live in the vehicle. So, I mean, and those are people that, or that's a person with some mental health issues, and we actually have, I've spoken with Rabbi Cohen, and we've made efforts to work with this person. So again, we're not just sloughing these people off. I mean, we are making some type of effort to Chris, to get some assistance for these people. And we can, you know, we can sit here and be frustrated. I'll be honest, I can't fix everything. I can't fix all of the problems that we have. I mean, that's why we have the state, that's why we have public assistance, but some people, Chris, unfortunately choose to use that public assistance in a different way. And those are the people that I'm gonna be honest, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. But we do make an effort to help people and put people in the right direction. You know, and I get it. I mean, especially right now with it being as cold as it is, I mean, we have the same concerns. We don't send people to go, you know, live under the bridge and things of that nature. I mean, and if any of my officers did that, they'd be disciplined. That does not happen.
What would happen, I'm concerned, yeah, I understand it's cold out there, but unfortunately, I've lived places where we've had people sleeping in cars asphyxiated in this type of weather. The cars are running, the kind of cars that they're living in are not the kind of cars that's got the best exhaust systems in and things of that sort. If your police officers are out at night driving around, you see a van or a car, smoke coming out there, it's midnight, 1 o'clock, do you stop just to check to see if that person's okay in there?
The officers that work the midnight shift or work late on evenings, you know, have in the past stopped and, you know, checked on the welfare of people. Quite honestly, we have had people come back to our lobby. The lobby obviously is heated. They've spent the night. We've made phone calls to family members to try to get some type of assistance. We've had people come up and pick these people, whether they come from Rhode Island or wherever they come from, to come and pick up their family member to try to get them back home to be with their family. I mean, that does happen. Although rare, it does happen. And we do try to help these people. We don't just send them off. I mean, you know, perhaps years ago, Jimmy, you were talking about the old days of certain individuals. Perhaps back then, maybe that happened, and, you know, it used to be, you know, send them over to Hoosick Falls and let them worry about it, or we'd send them in a different direction. But we honestly do make an effort to try to help some of these people and get their families involved and get them the assistance that they need. We don't just shun them.
Okay. Anyone else who has not spoken yet? Mike?
Try not to repeat myself, but one thing I'd like to do is challenge Channel 13, who's covered us now for at least 3 shows, to come back and do an in-depth study and see how generous our town has been to the needy. That would be nice, instead of just putting us on TV and making us sound like we don't care about anybody. I think the panhandling thing should be passed. I've said that before, for all the reasons that even Chief Doucette just said. The living in your car thing, I think that might be better off to be separated from this and pass them as 2 separate things, and do a little bit more in-depth study on whether we should pass it the way it's written or change the wording of it. I would like to know why the homeless shelter closed down one of their shelters. I'd like to know what the homeless shelter has done with the $25,000 a year that they've been given on the ballot for the last several years. Last year, I don't think they put that much on.
Mike, that's, let's do that at another meeting.
Well, no, I would like to know, because they're putting you people in a very particular spot. And I think it's very, your responsibility is, like Mr. Ebert said, is to protect the citizens of Bennington and downtown. So I am for the ordinance. I do think you ought to look at the car thing, because that may be able to be solved in a better, different way. But I believe our police department is very humane. They're not going to just slap anybody in jail or throw them out of town. So thank you, but I wish you would pass the ordinance.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Joe, just one comment. I know this has been referred to as a panhandling ordinance. The ordinance is entitled Improper Use of Public Ways and Abatement of Public Nuisances. It's really meant to deal with a whole host of issues having to do with people's use of public ways, sidewalks, streets, parking lots. And so when we talk about people sleeping in their cars, we really are directing our concern to those people who take up residence on the street or in a public parking lot without the town's permission and attempt to live there for a period of time. And frankly, Joe, I think you're right. sleeping overnight in a car in this kind of weather is unsafe. For an extended period of time, it's unsanitary. And we have had instances where people have attempted to use facilities that were not proper sanitary facilities adjacent to where they were parked on the street, in view of the people who lived there or the businesses that acted there. And we need, and we have had, because this ordinance, the prohibition against sleeping in your car is not new, we simply amended it to clarify it. We have had to move these people on, and we have done so, and I congratulate the police for having done so very professionally and very much with compassion. But we don't go after the RVs that are parked in Walmart's parking lot. We don't go after people who, in fact, stay overnight in Walmart's parking lot or some other private parking lot. That's not where we're patrolling. But we do, I think, need the ability to prevent people from taking up residence on the public street in a vehicle and not only endangering their own lives, but creating issues for the people who might live there, who have to look out their windows and see this individual or individuals taking up residence there on the street with all of the ancillary issues that come from living in a domicile. And I think that I would encourage you to adopt the ordinance as it's presented to you, simply because that part's already in the ordinance. It's simply meant to clarify it here.
Okay. All right, we've been going over this for 2 months now, as far as here in public, on TV. Dan handed me a copy of Burlington's that's been in existence for about 10 years. 2 things strike me. One is ours mirrors it pretty much. 2, their fines are $50 to $500. But 3, the back part is the thing that Paul was going to when he's talking about the assistance. They have a list of services, and I'm surprised that Burlington, the size it is, has so...
Excuse me, Joe, Judy would like to speak.
Come on, Judy.
She's already speaking.
I asked 3 times, Judy. Please sit down and identify yourself.
I just have a question about this ordinance. If it were passed, how would it affect somebody who comes on the street, they have some kind of musical instrument in an open case in front of them, and in essence, they're begging because they're expecting coins to be thrown in that case. How would this affect them?
Well, I think John Shanahan just answered that. Did you hear John's comment?
As long as they're not blocking the public access, the public right-of-way.
That would
not
be
affect
okay?
them.
And they're not within
BBC
15 feet of an entrance.
Yeah, and the BBC is charged with the entertainment, all entertainment downtown. So hopefully if somebody was coming by, well, it's like Greg, who is hard up and he plays his guitar.
Yeah.
I would hope he goes to John and say, can I stay in front of People's Bank or the bulb out? I mean, the bulb outs are places where I would hope some of that stuff goes on versus right there in front of a business entrance or something like that.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, the other thing I was going to say about Burlington's is, the list of services they have for a town, city their size are very few compared to what we have, unless they haven't listed them all that they've got here. So if you haven't seen this as a board member, I see some of you have got it. You see what I'm talking about. So what's the pleasure of the board now? We've been going over this for 2 months.
Joe, I'd like to make a motion to approve this with a few amendments, if I may. Article 17, 4H, I would like to amend, this is the parking provision. I'd like to amend that to no vehicle parked on a public street, highway, sidewalk, or other public place shall be used as housing or for the purpose of sleeping beyond that of a short rest for the purpose of safety. Article 17, 4M, I would like to change to no person shall misrepresent the use of proceeds from solicitation. And Article 17-40, I would like to change to no person shall solicit within 10 feet of an entrance of a building. Little explanation. The first one, H, about the vehicles. I am not comfortable with people sleeping in cars, especially this time of year. I think it brings us a liability. I think it also creates an unsafe atmosphere for people walking to school in the morning. We have small children walking past these places. And I also think it takes the option off the table and forces us to do something about it. If you've got a family in a car with no place else to go, and an officer comes upon them and they have no place to go, then we have to do something. We have to enact the voucher system, or we have to contact the state, or we have to get something. But it's not a matter of just, if they have no place to go, then we have to deal with this. The second one, no person shall misrepresent the use of proceeds from solicitation. This is true of any sales or gifts of any registered charity. I think that's fair. If somebody says they need something, they should represent it honestly. And the third one, no person shall solicit within 10 feet of an entrance of a building. We define a public walkway in 17-3D as 10 feet. So I think it would be reasonable to stay within that 10 feet. Again, like I said, there's people that reside downtown. There's people that work downtown. And I think they deserve the respect of some personal space. Beyond that, I want to point out that this is not a ban on panhandling in the town of Bennington, as was represented on Channel 13 and in other media. This talks about a lot of things. I mean, it does not distinguish between economic status. We don't know the status of people that are behaving this way. We just need to, need them to respect their neighbor. I would expect that if a police officer were to ask you to move, to stop what you're doing, that you would stop. It should be the end of the conversation. There are a lot of people in our society now that will answer to your question of why you're doing that. Well, it's not illegal. We've gone away from what's good or what's right to what's legal and what's not legal in a lot of conversations, and I'm not comfortable with that, but unfortunately that's where we're at. The ordinance as presented and amended is very close to a lot of ordinances around the country that have come up that have been challenged in constitutional courts. The ordinances where they try to ban panhandling or push people aside or try to make the people disappear, they do not stand up in constitutional court, and I wouldn't recommend pursuing that. So,
Okay, for everyone, one more time, say the motion again.
the motion is to pass Article 17-4 with 3 amendments as stated. I have them in writing. Would you like me to read them again, or?
We've seen it.
Okay.
Okay, do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second it.
And I have a second. Any discussion on the motion as presented?
We're just voting on the amendment.
Well, no, on
No,
the, it would be
motion-
the entire ordinance with
Ordinance
the
with
amendments.
amendments was the motion.
I'd like to speak to it.
Okay?
I don't understand why we're going from 15 feet to 10 feet. 15 feet is, if you're going to allow some form of solicitation, then you might as well give that person that's soliciting at least some elbow room. 15 feet seems to be consistent with the other regulations that I've seen in ordinances. Well, in fact, Burlington, I think it's 20 feet, isn't it?
I think they're 15.
No, it's 15.
Okay. At one time, there were 20, but maybe they've lowered it to
We have
And-
smaller sidewalks than that.
And,
so.
and the other part about it is, we're not Burlington, we're not Salt Lake City. If we're going to say we don't want solicitation and we want these aggressive provisions in this, I think we should stay with at least the provisions that were offered as initially presented. I'd offer a further amendment, if I could. This.
Okay, go ahead and offer what you suggest, and we'll see if Greg wants to amend his.
I would ask that it be further amended to provide that this deals with public property and not other, because this was presented to us as dealing with public access, public controlled. When we're talking about the Walmart property, this is not public property, that's private property. This ordinance extends to Walmart in that entire area. And I would offer that or be struck.
Which section are you?
That's under section H.
Which article?
Under 17.3H under definitions.
Under definitions.
Okay.
Because it was presented that the public place shall mean a place where a governmental entity has title to, and that's what I understood that to be. If it's something more than that, that we're extending it to other private property controlled by a private person, that we're going to be doing their enforcement work, then I'm opposed to that motion, to the ordinance.
Okay, Greg, we want to amend your
So
motion?
you want to change the or to and in H?
Yep, yes.
Okay, I would amend my motion to include that amendment as well.
Sharon, you want to amend your second?
I'll amend my second.
Any other discussion? Okay, no discussion. All in favor of the ordinance as amended? Signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All opposed? 1. Motion passed. Stuart, for the public, will you review the procedure from here on out on the ordinance?
Yes, we'll amend the ordinance. I'm going to circulate a signature page. We will amend it as per the board's request. This ordinance will be posted in the Banner, which is a newspaper of public circulation. It will be posted in 5 public places, and it will be done so for within 14 days, and there is a 60-day waiting period before the ordinance takes effect to allow for people to petition for a vote on the ordinance should they decide to do so.
Okay, thank you. Dan?
Just a point of clarification, because I was talking to the chief and wasn't clear. Because Tom made a motion to amend, did we leave it at 15 feet or is it amended down to 10 feet?
Stayed at
It's still-
15. I mean,
Oh, no, it
sorry,
stayed at 10,
Stayed at
10 feet,
Sorry.
yeah.
I'm going to call for a short recess, because I know some people want to leave here, so let's take a 5-minute recess.
Wait, it stayed at 10? I thought, okay.
What?
Yeah, stayed at 10.
It stayed at 10,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Our sidewalks are only 10.
I thought
Community Youth Fund proposal, please.
Before you freeze to death.
Please identify yourself for the public, please.
My name is Susan Scorbati. I teach at Bennington College, and I started the program Quantum Leap 15 years ago. I wanted to hand this, just take one. So I just would like, thank you very much for letting me come tonight. This will be short, but I just wanted to introduce an idea to all of you, and maybe at your next meeting, you could respond, and we could have a further conversation if you think it merits going forward. Just wanted to say that I started this program, Quantum Leap, 15 years ago, and we've now reached over 2,000 young people in Bennington. The 3 programs are still going strong at the high school. But one of the things that I've observed after 15 years is there's still a bunch of youth in Bennington that seem to be disaffected, particularly outside of school. I think there's, many youth still talk about how they need other things to do during the times when they're not in school. So this idea has to do with having every March at town meeting, there would be a box outside of the voting place, the meeting hall, and it would be, everyone would be asked voluntarily to give $1 for the youth of Bennington.
Make sure you don't do this in a public place.
Well, let her finish.
No, outside of the public.
No, I was kidding.
Oh,
I
you're,
was just-
okay. So, and then I don't know if that would be appropriate, but I would ask if the town selectmen were able to match that. That would be something that would be matched every year. The funds would go towards, there would be an advisory board made up of community people. We would get an advisory board together, and we would set up applications, and I could set up the application now at Bennington College online. So any young person could apply for, as I said, small funds, anywhere between $500 and $2,000. They would have to have an adult supervisor that would sign on to the project. The application would say how much they would impact the community. That would be the criteria of how important it was and how many other youth they would reach in the community. The advisory board would meet with these young people after they'd applied and their adult supervisor and help them work on their application, maybe, guide them to resources in town, encourage them. Certain projects would be chosen, and the projects would occur. at which point, at the end of the year, in December, they would have to write up a report and tell us, what the effect of their project was. That would be publicized in the Bennington Banner, and then it would start all over again at the next town meeting day, where you would get your dollars would come in again. So this is the idea, and it's basically just to really encourage and support youth-initiated projects, that the projects would come from the youth, and I would hope, even if there were 2 or 3 really good ones the first year, that would make a big difference, because it would involve a lot of other youth in Bennington. So that's the idea.
Generally, I'm behind a project like this, but there's some logistical things. First of all, I think there's some real strict rules about people standing out in front of the polling place, collecting money, soliciting money, or whatever.
Right.
And there is a distinction between the voting day and the town hall meeting. The town hall is the night before the day. Now, I think that if it was a town hall meeting, we could make some kind of exception to that happen out there, but.
Well, I think if the town is authorizing the organization to solicit funds on behalf of whatever project that they're working on, the annual meeting night would be the time. I told Susan when she first talked to me about this, I really need to check with the town clerk to
Right.
understand what the rules
Voting
are
officer.
about election day, because there are very strict rules, and I haven't had that chance to do that yet.
I know even I, as running for office, I had to stand so many feet away from the main entrance and this kind of thing. The other concern I have, or not concern, but consideration that I think I would have as a select board member is we have a generous community, and, let's say you get $20,000 donation, our ability to match 20,000 might be it.
Oh, no. I see what you're saying.
I'd like to take,
Right.
if it's
Yeah.
a program we adopt, I think we could, during budget time, say, yes, it's a worthwhile program, we'd appropriate up to X number of dollars in order to do something like that.
Absolutely. The intention is just $1 per person. If they gave a lot more money, that would be wonderful, but that was the intention of however many people actually, put money in, that would be counted and asked to match.
And
Excuse me.
The only other question I have is this is going to be open-wide, community-wide to all the young people from the ages 14 to 23, not just college students?
Oh, no, not mainly for college students at all. I would say it's for young people who don't have the money, don't have the, access to be able to do certain kinds of projects. An after-school basketball league, helping to pay for equipment. A garden club.
Right.
Whatever it is that the young people felt like they could do and would help support that to reach a lot of other young people. That's the intention.
Great. Any other board members?
Yes.
Jim?
Please. I fully endorse that. I think it's a great idea, but I've got to just point out the ordinance that we just passed, that the majority of the board voted on. Doesn't this fly in the face of it?
No.
This is on public property. It doesn't? Well, explain to me how.
Well, because it's an organization that would be recognized as being exempt from the vendor's ordinance because they're seeking donations for a particular project or plan, as opposed to an individual or individuals.
Okay.
Camping out in front of a doorway of a
All
downtown
right.
business.
Thank you for the
Okay.
clarification.
Other board members? Greg?
Yeah, I do have a couple of comments. One, I would like to find some way to support it. I mean, I think, speaking to the ordinance we just passed, it deals with people who have disengaged. It's, when you get behavior like we've been talking about, it's people who have disengaged from their community. They're not really interested in the conventions and whatnot, and there's a lot of people that do that. And any program we can get which will bring a kid back before he disengages, I think is worth all the effort and support we can give it. I'm a little sensitive to the town meeting aspect in that there's a lot of organizations that are getting funding for town meeting day that are doing a lot of legwork and petitioning and things like that to get on the ballot or whatever. I'm wrestling with, do we put it up there just because you were smart enough to ask?
Right.
First,
Well,
or
I think here's the
is, you
decision,
know-
and I'm totally respect either way you would decide to go. The reason why I brought it to the town, to all of you, is because I felt like, I started to think about if every town in the country had a community youth fund for their youth, to kind of show the youth that the town cares about them, and everybody would give $1 every year. I think there's a statement that's being made about the town, and so I don't see this, I'm not representing any organization, honestly. I feel like the idea, I feel like I could do this and not do it through the town, right? I could set it up through the college, nonprofits that I work with, and that's possible, I'm not saying I really know the answer to this.
So your suggestion is that it's actually a town initiative?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
All
think
right.
that's what I was thinking,
not a new
that
organization
that the
outside.
town of Bennington would, the funding would be housed in some sort of, account.
Yeah, that part wouldn't be hard, and the thing is, as I read your thing here, the college is gonna pick up a lot of stuff. You're gonna have the mentor program.
Right.
You're gonna have stuff, so it's
Right.
gonna be a partnership.
Absolutely.
Which, I don't know if you tuned in, was it last week we had, or the week before we had the school here, the schools? We've made an effort, because of, we finally got smart, I guess, to realize we've got to get engaged more with the youth of this community. And we had the educators in here, I think, 2 weeks ago, and went through the whole thing. And I believe you coming into town is the right thing to do. I just think it's something we got to work out. And I'm not sure, maybe we put our thinking caps on, we find a better time for them to get out there to get this money rather than
That's
going
absolutely
through,
fine, yeah. If it's not really that evening,
Yeah,
that's the
maybe-
best
maybe
time.
another-
Maybe it's a time the whole town knows that they could come out and, you know what I mean? This box would be somewhere,
Sure.
and we could do it like that. I'm very open to whatever ideas you would have that would make this work. I'm not tied to any particular, detail in this at all. And I also, as I said, if it just doesn't feel right for the town, I think there's maybe still ways to move it forward. But anyway, just wanted to throw the idea out there.
Is there any board member that doesn't feel this is a good program for the town to get involved in?
I think it is a good program. I had a couple questions just based on the fact that I see project a lot, I see mentor a lot, and I'm a little confused as to what type of program it actually is. Are these going to be college students trying to mentor young kids? Because obviously a 23-year-old's not going to be mentored by a 20-year-old
Right,
college
no,
student. That doesn't
right.
really make sense.
Right.
And then again, with Bennington College, is this going to be a class? Is this like a community service class? Or are you picking people up as a club at Bennington College? And what's the interest there?
Well, because I teach there, and Quantum Leap, we started out training college students to be mentors for young people in town. So I have a lot of experience with that. The only reason I put the Bennington College students in there is because my students at Bennington actually, when they heard the idea, said, oh, we would love to help younger people. And I think they were thinking more the 14, 15-year-olds, that if they applied online, let's say, and were having problems figuring out how to figure out what they wanted to do, and their adult supervisor needed some help to understand how to move forward, there would be college students who could help them with the application. That was really, and I didn't really spell that out enough in that. I don't see this as a mentoring program. I only saw it as mentoring for the application process, because we don't have the funds or the ability to direct a program like that. And I want this to be really sustainable, so it's the least amount of, problems having to figure out how to make it work. I see it more very independent for the youth and the adult supervisor. That's where really they're taking over the project. The college students only would come in if there needed to be some help in the application process.
But if they chose to volunteer with these kids, that would be okay too.
Absolutely, as long as then we would have to really think through, it gets into more of a mentoring program, they need FBI checks, do you know what I mean? Like, we'd have to be very serious about it, setting it up as a mentoring program. So that, I don't really intend that for this.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is your Quantum Leap, does that take in Bennington County or like Shaftesbury and Pownell?
No, it doesn't, and I'm sorry, but I was saying Bennington County has these problems, but this is for the town of
It's
Bennington.
just for the town of
Yes, and that's where Quantum Leap is as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Board members, Tom?
I think, I see this as another important hole that hasn't been filled, but it's going to probably have to be treated with all the other holes that we have in our system, in our town, that are being recognized by this board and the schools as well. I'd like to see a presentation at budget time for for this adventure, so that the town can make a decision through the board or through the population as to how it wants to support it.
And I guess to add on to that, with that presentation, what I'd like to see, you talked about other, being able to go after other monies. I'd like to see what you're able to achieve, what you've already developed in that regard, because you said that you were capable of doing this without our help. So what you can do, what you are already bringing to the table, what we can add, a little more detail as to where the money will go, instead of something that's saying just projects, something a little more detailed. But again, I agree with everyone that this is something that we do need, and it will help a lot of people, so.
Yeah, and
very
can I say
encouraged.
just that there is some money in Quantum Leap, because the intention of that money is to go towards students at risk, or students who need encouragement to be more successful with their lives. So I do have a little startup money. I see this to be sustainable. There's very little money involved in this. I don't think it's about trying to sustain, $50,000 a year, or I think if there was $5,000 a year, $10,000 a year to run this program, so that there were those $500, $1,000 projects that could go out there, there's a lot could happen for a small amount of money. I think we could find someone to coordinate this. I don't think it would take a lot of coordination either, because it's only happening once a year that these applications are coming in. That you could, I think I said this, you could pay someone $2,000 just to coordinate this. So I really think that we could keep it at a very minimal level, but then make it really sustainable.
Stuart, who on the town staff, if the town was to take and bring this on as one of our projects, who on the town staff would have overall responsibility for an area like this?
It's a good question, Joe. I really hadn't thought too much about who particularly on town staff, and it might be that we would involve 2 or 3 individuals from the staff who would form part of the advisory committee to help get this up and running, so that in fact town staff are involved. The money obviously would work its way through our financial system if we were the ones to control it, just as we've done with other organizations that do some fundraising. We act as the bank, and we release the funds when they are needed. We can do that, and if in fact it becomes a town-sponsored fund, then your donations are tax deductible.
Right.
So you could maybe reach even a bigger.
And we have the ability to secure those funds until they're used and things also.
Oh, yes.
Go ahead, Mike. Mike, come on up.
None of this is done by the high school now, or you couldn't collaborate. This would be a good thing, like Joe, I think, is saying, to bring the town and the school together on something like this.
I think that's a great
Have you
idea.
talked to Stu
I have.
McGuire, or-
I have.
You have?
I have talked to Sue McGuire. Yes, and she's very supportive of the idea.
This could be your missing link.
Why don't we ask Stuart, why don't you bring this up at your next staff meeting and talk it among your staff members and get their sense, because, I mean, we're going to sit here and say yes or no, but it's going to fall back on the staff to make this happen. And come back to us and say how the town sees this, and if you think it's a good program, and who's going to have responsibility to get with Susan again before budget period of time, and just exchange information and then present the town's position to the board during our budget time. Does that sound okay, board members?
One other comment, you may all have received this. I got an email the other day from Bennington College
Yes.
students trying to set up some meetings and asking how the town and the college can kind of close the gap. So I don't have the date on the top of my head, but it's.
It's coming up, it's on my calendar.
Yeah, 2, one there and one here.
Friday the 6th, and I think on the 7th.
And I think we could get Southern Vermont College students involved.
I'm sure you
we
can.
could.
Sure you could.
So, I mean, I did some counseling when I was in high school at a science camp for 6th graders, and they stepped, they had the 6th graders, then we had high school kids, and then you had college kids, and then the adult staff, and it was, it's really interesting to see how different kids respond, to different levels. And if you just have, 14-year-olds and grown-ups, there's a gap there, but if you can kind of step it through and get some communication, it really.
I think it's a great idea.
So we'll do some more studying on it, and we'll get back with you, but I think we've got until January to present to the board a proposal, and we'll take it up at budget time. Okay?
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for coming in. Sorry to make you wait. I wish I
Let
had
me know if you'd
brought
like
you up
any more
earlier.
information, or, yeah, I'm
Okay,
happy.
thanks.
Thanks, Susan.
Okay, we'll go back to Pageant Street now. Stuart, who's going to talk to
Yes,
Pageant?
This is really, you have two letters in your packet that were written, one by a resident of Pageant Street, another by an individual who uses that on a daily basis to move to a business that is family-owned. And I can tell you that my staff has been involved with some of the problems that are being created here with vehicles that are being parked on the street right at the crest of the hill on Pageant Street. And regardless of whether you're traveling Pageant from north to south or south to north, if those vehicles are parked on the crest of that hill, it narrows the traveled way down to much less than two vehicles need. We have tried to work collaboratively with the folks who live in the residences that are the offenders, and to no avail. So what I'm here tonight to ask you folks is would you consider adopting a no parking ordinance for a very specific section of that Pageant Street where sight distance is an issue? And we would then go out and determine with engineering help what that specific length of street should be. But I didn't want to come to you with a proposed ordinance unless you folks were willing to consider it. But if you've driven Pageant Street or walked Pageant Street, it can be difficult in the spring, summer, and fall months at this particular location.
Has everybody driven there to see the
Yeah,
point?
I just
You know,
did.
You know, everybody, yeah. We've done this in other parts of the town, other streets. I'm thinking up to school, Ben Hill kind of thing, and I think this is another area where we got to take a hard look at it. And it is a blind turn up there. If those cars, 4 or 5 cars are parked there, it narrows it down to basically one lane.
Yeah, I mean, I might have grown a little used to it over
Yeah.
22 years. And, you know, when I saw this, I was kind of like, oh, really? You know, and I said to Jane, I said, do you have a problem at the other end of the street? She said, oh, my God, yes. I said, all right, maybe I'm not seeing it. But, I mean, I drive it a lot, you know, back and forth from the shop several times a day. And, yes, when you're approaching the top of that hill, you cannot see very far. Now, if you're going a speed limit, it's not so much a problem, but the point is raised that there are people that come through there a little quickly. The street's been recently paved at the other end, so it's a little easier to pick up some speed. If there's more than one car along that stretch, then you really don't have time to recover if you get hung out there. You know, if you get up there and somebody's coming the other way, I could see how people would be nervous about that. I balance between, you know, do we make a no parking zone in front of one person's home, or do we put up a sign that says limited sight slow, you know, or something like that? I think those would be the two options I would offer. Because if you're not familiar with the street, you may not realize that you lose your vision that quickly, because it's not like that anywhere else, and it happens very quickly. Most people on that street do not park in front of their home. Some have created driveways off the road, but most have long enough driveways that they can park on their driveway. This particular place that has a lot of vehicles in their driveway, and when they're shuffling them around, people leaving at different times like this, they wind up on the street, unfortunately, a lot more than other people in the neighborhood, and it's the worst place to do it. Yeah, I can definitely say that something could be looked at. I tend to think that, you know, warning traffic may be a more effective use than a stretch of no parking, but
We'll take a look at those options.
Other board members?
Previously, we talked about one road that had, no longer fits the standards of allowing parking on either side of the road. It's too narrow at this point. Can we develop a list or look at a list of roads that might fall into this category so we don't have to? I'm sorry, but I mean, it should be looked at.
Bennington, will you?
It should be looked at. I mean,
Well,
because
this
we're
is
going
not
to have
curved
these
either.
issues pop up from time to time.
Yeah.
And I'd be just as frustrated if I lived on that street. And right now, it's Pageant, the next day, it's gonna be a different one. We should be aware of our new standards and what roads don't apply. And we're not going to be able to affect
This
them all
road's not
immediately.
curbed, so you do have that variable of whose lawn falls off and whose doesn't. Of course, this lawn, not only in the wrong place for the hill, falls off more than most of the, you know, so you can't really pull a couple feet off the road or anything.
Right.
So, yeah,
And I'm
it's-
not sure how much people pay attention to a sign that says slow down, you know, sight distance, that kind of thing. It's like seeing, you know, the yellow sign that
Well, there's
says
no other signs on the
kids at
road.
play, you know?
But it just
I want
seems,
to.
I know, I do too, but there's
just
a lot
seems
of
like
people
we would
that-
have, just like we have
Yeah.
the paving plan over the years, that you'd be looking at this on a overall basis, and this just happens to be this one right now, but I'd like to see, like John does, sort of a plan to deal with these issues, because they're not going to go away, they're only going to increase. I can say that from my own neighborhood, that I'd love to see no parking from my house all the way to the Elm Street Marketplace, because I think it's somewhat dangerous. But I think we do need some kind of a plan, and I'd like to see the town manager's office approach it that way, rather than
Something short of a
piecemeal.
bypass.
Okay, Stuart,
That's what
can you
happens
just
because-
provide for the next meeting, give us a drawing of the street,
well, yeah,
curb,
we'll talk-
what your recommendations are?
May not be ready for the next meeting, Joe. but
Okay.
We'll get to it. Right now, you're into the winter parking ban anyway, so
Right.
they can't really park on the streets. So, but we'll move on it.
Okay. Manager's report.
Remember all the trucks when, yeah.
I have drafted for you, based on your request, a letter to the Bennington County delegation regarding the conceptual plan for Northside Drive. You had a copy of that letter in your pocket, and I have the packet, and I have the original here. I don't think there's a need to read it. The press already has this in their packet as well. But I think it addresses the concerns that you all raised about why you'd like to see this happen or move forward. And if you're comfortable with the letter, I have signature lines for you folks to sign it, and we'll get it into the mail and to the governor and Secretary Brian Searles as quickly as possible.
The key is to get to the legislatures, and I'll just tell you, the committees are already meeting. I got to testify up there next week in front of a committee, so they're already, even though they're not in session, they are meeting. And I know Representative Tim Corcoran on the transportation on the House side, and Bob Hartwell on the Senate side will take these issues up. So we need to make sure, if this is what we agreed on saying, and I read it, and I think it covers the areas,
That's good.
that get
Good
this in the
statement.
hands of our legislators.
Can we get the V-Trans folks in more engaged? Because, letters are good to the legislatures, but, and the pressure's going to come from the legislature. But I'd love to have them sit before us and tell us why the heck for the last 10 years they haven't been doing a thing, sitting on the
Well,
butt.
we've already engaged Sue Minter, who is the assistant
Deputy.
secretary, I believe, that's her title.
Yes.
She's already been engaged in this and another project in town, so.
She'll be showing
there's Potential. that we could-
Secretary Searles was shown it this year at the, he was down for, was it the BCRC annual meeting? He got a little tour as well, so I think they're all familiar with it now.
But Sue will make it happen, because Brian Searles,
He's got a lot going on.
he's all upset about the railroad right now. So he's not worrying about
Rightfully
things.
so.
Circulate for signature?
Yes. That's including that, Mike, but it's the whole thing. We're telling them, if you get the drainage systems in there and you do the other pedestrian improvements you need to make, that we're making when the time nails, that we'll take over that stretch of highway.
We are going to have a full public discussion about those roundabouts, correct, before we do.
Well, some of it's been directed already.
More than one of them.
One of them has. Yeah.
No, the other ones, I'll take it back a little, Mike. There was some conversation with the delegation, and one of the comments was, if you have some kind of a concept, get it up here so we can get some kind of a conversation going here and get this going. And we're going to be doing some work out there, or they're going to be doing some work, we're going to be doing some work. So instead of doing all that work and then coming back in 2 years and busting it all up to do something else, and try and get a comprehensive plan and get that.
I'm disagreeing with the roundabouts, I think 3 or 4 that myself and I have talked about it. But
Right.
my biggest concern, I hope you people will look at it, is we don't want to make the mistake that seems to have happened over in North Bennington. You've all heard about that
Yeah.
situation. And there's a lot of people on Willow Park and Applegate physically going to walk back and forth across, and we've got to make sure that there is pedestrian safe traffic. And I
Yeah.
cannot see how you're going to do it with 3 or 4 roundabouts without a light. But thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Anything else, Stuart?
Yes, two things that were not written about. The first is you received a packet tonight that contains a memorandum from me that is updated from 2011, which is the last time the Select Board looked at the whole issue of the fire departments and consolidation. That packet contains historic information about the rural fire district and how it was developed, It contains some information about the Bennington Fire Department and how it contracts with the town for protection. It contains a listing of equipment and buildings that are owned by both entities. And I'm presenting it to you tonight. It's also gone out to people in charge in the 2 fire districts, fire departments, with an eye to at some point calling a meeting of the group wherein you would sit down with representatives of the 2 fire departments to talk about some of these issues and some of the benefits. I should note also that our finance director has calculated what the tax rate implication would be based on this current year's budgets for both districts and the current grand list. So it's just information. I wanted to get it to you. We'd hope to begin talking about this, I think, in November, but November is pretty much past. But nonetheless, you now have it. The second thing is a request for a grant for vehicle charging stations. And Mike, you want to come up to the mic? You're the guy pulling this together. I think Mike emailed this to many of you today to give you a heads up. It's coming late to the board. It's not included in the packet, but there is a time limit on when the application can be supplied. So Mike, I'll let you take it.
I'll open it up to any questions. The grant came through from the Agency of Natural Resources and the Downtown program, both through the state, where they've received some federal funding to help municipalities install vehicle charging stations. Before we moved through this, I did talk with Dan and BCRC, who are both interested in this opportunity. Based on the research I've got and the data, we'd be looking, if we did 1 or 2, they're about $10,000 a piece installed, and there are various ways to install them. There are various ways to set it up so you either the municipality pays the amount, or you have it so there's a credit card system. There's a lot of different options. Really, tonight, for me to submit an application, even to be considered, I need some type of formal support from the local select board for the application.
What's the town match?
25%, but it can be in kind or cash. So there may be opportunities for us to provide some of the work. BCRC may be able to provide some assistance with the planning around it. And BCRC is willing to research the option of seeing if there might be people or companies that would be willing to support the matching funds to make that happen.
Why is GMP supporting Rutland's when they're not supporting Bennington's?
That I'm not
Let's
sure.
find that out. They're
What's
making
that?
Rutland the big thing, GMP. I mean, we're a customer of GMP as well as with Rutland is, and we ought to be getting some of those things they're passing out up there. And,
Ask.
yeah. But I think we gotta, the timing's right to go on here, even though there's not that many cars available, but it's gonna become a time when it's there. And I think Congressman Welch has got a bill in the House of Representatives that's pushing this thing too.
Right now, the 2 locations have been, that have been tossed around are the town office as well as the municipal parking lot behind TD Bank, were the 2 that probably seem most appropriate.
And this would be open to anybody to use?
It would be open, and we could decide, again, how we do that, whether or not there's a time limit on it, whether or not it's credit card pay, whether or not I talked with somebody when they did it in Montpelier. I also have a call in to the Regional Planning Commission in Addison County, which recently did some as well. And they said, they get a handful of people, but it's by no means booked all the time.
Right.
And the cost is pretty nil to them at this point, but we could certainly develop whatever we feel is most appropriate for that.
Yeah, I think this is a great idea. I think we'll need to really be considerate as to where we put these. Seems a little close to be at the town office and at TD Bank. I mean, we're pretty widespread, so just as long as we're looking at a good location that everyone can have access to this.
And it just
that
has to
needs
be
it.
on municipal land, so that's the key. So if we think there's a better location, we can certainly do that.
So all you need is the support of the board right now. You'll come up with specifics later.
Yes. Yeah, essentially, it just, you're giving me the okay to submit the application.
So moved.
Go ahead. Second.
Got a motion?
Motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second
Any
it.
discussion? All in favor?
Thank you very much.
Just so you know, the state has gone to these vehicles, and their fleet vehicles, and I'll have one down here in the home hopefully in the next month that we'll be using here, but this is just for people passing through primarily to use these things, because you're gonna plug in your own home when you.
Yeah, it extends the range.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
Extends the range of what it does.
I mean, I think one of the things about the downtown is you have a significant commuter base.
Right.
It's a good marketing tool as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Mike? Anything else, Stuart?
That's it for me.
John?
No.
Jim?
All good.
Tom?
None.
Greg?
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, it's a time of caring and sharing.
Nothing for me, thanks.
I just want to the public, you know, you heard my comments about when it's cold out there, sleeping in cars, people getting asphyxiated. It does happen. People out there here, but there's another risk right now, and I would ask you to double-check your wood stoves.
Smoke detectors.
Smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors. Those are the kind of things that,
Save
in the
people's
past,
lives.
we see people forget to do it, and we end up with fires, we end up with fatalities. So it only takes a minute to check those things out. And, you know, there's a right way, there's a code way, and then there's the Vermonter way that my father used to practice that was totally wrong, okay, where you cob things together. So please, if you need some assistance, there's plenty of professionals out there can help you on these things. But I think we did have a fire last year due to a wood stove cooking off. So just everybody be careful with the holiday season coming up, okay? We have need to go to an executive session for contracts, for loans, and some legal action. Can I have a
So
motion?
moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Thank you.